The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council floated in the empty space. Between three ancient star systems, it was a massive structure made of crystal and metal that had stood for over 12,000 years. Representatives from 947 different species gathered there every standard cycle to discuss matters of trade, war, and survival. Ambassador of the Empire stood at the central speaking platform. His tall blue form towered over most other species in the chamber. His 4 eyes scanned the crowd with barely hidden contempt as he spoke about the latest topic of discussion. The humans of Earth have once again requested membership in the council. Okay, announced, his voice carried through the hall thanks to translation devices that converted his words into hundreds of languages simultaneously. This is their 7th request in the past 50 cycles. A wave of amusement passed through the assembly. Several delegates made sounds that indicated laughter in their respective cultures. Others simply shook their heads or waved their tentacles. Dismissal. Perhaps we should let them in, said Representative Al of the Membrane Collective. The jellyfish-like being pulsed with soft light as it spoke. They could serve refreshments at our meetings. More laughter followed this comment. The humans had become something of a joke among the greater galactic community. Their small planet sat in a quiet corner of an unremarkable spiral arm. They had only discovered faster than light travel 300 years ago, which made them practically infants by galactic standards. Commander Sarah watched the proceedings from the observation gallery reserved for non-member species. She was 42 years old, with short black hair and calm brown eyes that revealed nothing of her thoughts. Beside her sat Dr. Earth's chief scientific advisor and Admiral James, who commanded Earth's small defensive fleet. They're laughing at us again, said quietly. His voice carried a hint of frustration. Sarah nodded but said nothing. She had attended these sessions for 15 years. Now, the mockery no longer bothered her. In fact, she found it useful. The delegate is calling for a vote, Admiral observed. The old soldier's face remained perfectly still. He had learned long ago to hide his emotions in diplomatic settings. Below them, OK raised one of his 4 arms. All those in favor of denying Earth's membership request, please indicate now. The holographic display above the chamber lit up with thousands of green lights. Each light represented a vote against Earth. Only a handful of yellow lights appeared, indicating abstention. Not a single red light showed support for humanity's request. The motion passes. OK declared. Earth's request is again. He paused and looked up toward the observation gallery where the human delegation sat. Perhaps the humans should focus on developing their primitive technology before they waste our time with future requests. Sarah stood and bowed politely toward the assembly. It was the expected response. Show humility, accept the rejection gracefully, return home and try again next cycle. That was the game Earth had been playing for decades. But Sarah knew something that OK and all the other delegates did not know. Earth was not playing the same game anymore. Earth had never been playing the same game at all. The human delegation left the Grand Assembly Hall without incident. They boarded their small transport ship, a vessel that the other species considered barely functional. It had outdated engines, minimal weapons, and shields that would fail against any serious attack. At Least that was what the specifications showed once they were safely in hyperspace and far from any listening devices. Admiral finally allowed himself to smile. Another successful performance, he said. Agreed, Sarah replied. She pulled up holographic display from her chair's armrest. Project Sentinel reports that construction is 97% complete, will be ready within 6 months. Leaned forward with excitement in his eyes. 97%. After all these years, we're almost there. The project he spoke of had no official name in any public record. It existed only in the minds of a select few thousand humans who had dedicated their lives to its completion. It was humanity's greatest secret, hidden not just from the galaxy, but from most of Earth's own population. 300 years ago, when humanity had first ventured beyond their solar system, they had discovered a terrible truth. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. It was a jungle where the strong consumed the weak without mercy. Species that revealed their true capabilities too early were either conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. The Galactic Council was not a democratic body seeking peace and cooperation. It was an alliance of powerful species who had agreed to stop fighting each other only because mutual destruction had become too costly. They maintained their power by keeping younger species weak and dependent. Earth's early leaders had recognized this immediately. They had seen how the Council treated newcomers. Advanced technology was restricted, military development was monitored and limited. Any species that grew too powerful too quickly simply disappeared from galactic records. So humanity had made a choice. They would play the role of the primitive newcomers. They would appear weak, harmless, and slightly foolish. They would accept mockery and rejection with humble smiles, and all the while in secret locations that no alien sensor had ever detected. They would build the transport ship. Arrived at Earth's orbital station after 3 days of travel. From the outside, it looked like any other minor colony's spaceport. Few dozen ships of various sizes came and went. Cargo moved through warehouses. Workers in simple suits performed maintenance on the station's aging systems. Commander made her way to a private office deep within the station's administrative section. She placed her hand on a scanner that read not just her fingerprints but also the unique quantum signature of her neural implant. A hidden door slid open. The room beyond the door was small and bare except for a single elevator. Sarah stepped inside and spoke clearly. Level Omega. Authorization Alpha 779. The elevator began to descend, but it did not go down through the station. Instead, it traveled through a dimensional fold that connected to a location far from Earth's orbital path. The journey took only seconds, but in that time Sarah had crossed nearly 500 billion km. The doors opened onto a vast construction bay carved into the heart of a captured asteroid, and there, filling the entire cavity of that hollowed rock, was Project Sentinel. The ship was enormous, beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Standard carriers in the Council's fleet measured roughly 3 km in length. The largest warship ever recorded, the Imperial Fist, stretched to 8 km. Project Sentinel was 47 km long. Its hull was covered in weapon systems that utilized principles of physics the Council believed were impossible. Its engines could tear holes in space itself. Its shields were layered in dimensions that most species could not even perceive. Admiral was waiting for her near the observation deck that overlooked the ship's main body. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" he said softly. Sarah nodded. 30 years of work, 10 generations of scientists and engineers, all leading to this. "Have you decided on a name yet?" asked. Sarah was quiet. For a moment, the tradition of naming ships was ancient among humans. Names carried meaning and history. This ship would need a name that reflected its purpose. "I was thinking about that," she finally said. "In old Earth mythology, there was a figure called the Sentinel, a guardian who watched over humanity while they slept, protecting them from threats they couldn't see. I think we should call her the Awakening." Smiled. "The Awakening. I like it because when she wakes up, the whole galaxy will know." Far across the spiral arm, in a region of space that no council vessel had visited in centuries, something else was awakening. They had slumbered for 10,000 years. They were not truly alive in the way most species understood life. They were more like a force of nature, a hunger given form and purpose. In the ancient wars that had shaped the galaxy, they had consumed entire civilizations before. The combined might of every living species had driven them into dormancy, now disturbed by some unknown force that were stirring their first scouts. Ship-sized organisms made of metal and flesh had begun to move through the dark spaces between stars. They remembered the taste of intelligent minds. They remembered the satisfaction of consuming worlds, and they were very, very hungry. A small exploration vessel from the Membrane Collective was the first to encounter them. The ship had been studying unusual energy readings near an abandoned sector. When the scout appeared, the crew had only seconds to send a distress signal before their vessel was torn apart and consumed. The signal reached Council Space 3 days later. Representative Al received the recording in his private chambers. What he heard made his entire body flash red with terror. "No," he whispered. "It cannot be. They were supposed to be dead within hours." The entire Galactic Council was in emergency session. The mood in the Grand Assembly Hall was very different from the casual mockery of Earth's membership request. Fear hung in the air like a physical presence. High Commander or of the Combined Defense Fleet stood at the central platform. He was an ancient warrior who had seen more battles than most species had recorded in their histories. Even he looked shaken. "Our long-range sensors have confirmed the worst, or announced they are awake. We have detected at least 47 distinct signatures moving toward populated space based on our historical records. Each signature represents a hive ship capable of consuming an entire star system." Panic rippled through the assembly. Delegates shouted questions and demands. Some species began transmitting emergency evacuation orders to their "What are our options? Okay," demanded. Or's expression was grim. "Our combined fleet numbers approximately 12,000 combat vessels. In the last war against thee, it took nearly 100,000 ships to drive them back, and that conflict lasted for 300 years. We lost 47 species entirely. If these readings are accurate, the swarm is larger now than it was then. Then we are doomed," someone called out from the assembly. "Not necessarily," or replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "We have technologies now that did not exist in the ancient war. We have better weapons, Stronger shields, faster ships, perhaps. We can hold them at the outer colonies until we develop new strategies. But everyone in the chamber knew the truth. They were coming, and there was nothing the council could do to stop them. The galaxy, as they knew it, would soon end. In the observation gallery, 3 human representatives watched the chaos below. Earth had not been invited to the emergency session, but Commander had certain methods of observing events when she needed to. Said quietly, "I've read about them in the ancient archives. They're worse than anything the Council has faced in." Admiral studied the tactical display that or had projected 47 hive ships, each one capable of consuming a star system, and the Council fleet can barely scratch them. Sarah stood very still, processing what she had seen. The timeline had just changed. Project Sentinel was 6 months from completion. But humanity might not have 6 months anymore. We need to accelerate the schedule, she said. Finally, is that possible? Asked. It will have to be. Contact director at the construction site. Tell her we need the awakening operational in 60 days. Looked at her sharply. 60 days? That's impossible. The weapon systems alone need another 4 months of calibration. Then we'll calibrate them in flight. They won't wait for our convenience. Sarah turned away from the observation window and contact the other human settlements, all of them. It's time to end the game. Earth maintained dozens of colony worlds, or so the Council believed. In reality, the number was much higher. Hidden stations, underground bases, and pocket dimensions scattered across the galaxy held millions of humans who had never appeared in any census report. These were the workers and soldiers and scientists who had spent their lives preparing for a moment that many believed would never come. Now that moment was approaching. Messages encrypted in ways the Council could never break spread through human space. Production facilities hidden inside gas giants and asteroid fields increased their output. Training programs that had operated at reduced capacity for decades suddenly activated at full strength. In the belly of the awakening, teams of engineers worked around the clock. Systems that would normally take weeks to install were completed in days. Weapons that had never been tested in combat were loaded into their housings. Thousands of smaller craft were moved into these massive hangars, and on Earth itself, the ordinary citizens who knew nothing of Project Sentinel continued their daily lives. They worried about the rumors of some distant threat. They watched news reports about panic in the alien governments. Some packed emergency supplies, others simply hoped that whatever was happening would remain far away from their quiet world. They did not know that their planet had been protecting them all along. They did not know about the ships hidden beneath their oceans or the weapons platforms disguised as communication satellites. They did not know that humanity had been waiting, preparing for 300 years. But they would learn soon enough, because they were coming. The galaxy was about to face extinction, and Earth was finally ready to show everyone what humanity had been hiding all along. The awakening would soon live up to its name, and when it emerged from the shadows, nothing in the universe would ever be the same again. Commander Sarah stood on the bridge of the partially completed and looked out at the stars. She thought about her grandmother who had worked on this project 50 years ago. She thought about her daughter who might live in a galaxy where humans no longer had to pretend to be weak. 300 years of waiting, she said too. Herself, 300 years of smiling while they laughed at us, but we were never the joke, we were always the punchline. She turned to face her crew, men and women who had trained their entire lives. For this moment, they looked back at her with determination in their eyes. "Prepare for acceleration," Sarah ordered. "It's time to wake up," and in the depths of space, moving closer every moment, they continued their hungry advance. They had consumed civilizations beyond counting. They feared nothing in the galaxy, but they had never encountered humanity, and they had no idea what was about to meet them in the darkness. Between the stars, the first colony to fall was prime. It was a mining world on the outer edge of civilized space, home to 3 million workers and their families. They had 7 days of warning before they arrived. Admiral or had sent a defense fleet of 200 ships to protect the colony. These were not old vessels or weak ones. They represented some of the finest military technology the Council had ever produced. Their commanders were veterans of a dozen smaller conflicts. They believed they could hold the line long enough for evacuation. They were wrong. The hive ship emerged from darkness like a nightmare given form. It was over 60 km long, a twisted mass of organic matter, and absorbed technology from species that had died long before the current civilizations were born. Its surface writhed and pulsed with alien life, thousands of smaller organisms separated from its body like seeds falling from a rotting fruit. The fleet opened fire. Immediately, energy weapons carved lines of destruction across the hive ship's surface. Missiles detonated against its hull in brilliant explosions. For a moment, there was hope that modern technology might succeed where ancient weapons had failed. Then the hive ship responded. A wave of energy, unlike anything in the Council's databases, swept outward from the creature. It passed through shields as if they did not exist. It ignored armor and defensive systems. Every ship it touched simply stopped functioning. Crews found themselves floating dead in space as their vessels went dark around them. The smaller organisms descended on the helpless fleet. They did not merely destroy the ships, they consumed them, absorbing metal and flesh and energy into their own bodies. Within 2 hours, nothing remained of the 200 vessels, except scattered debris and the screams recorded in their final transmissions. Prime itself lasted another 6 hours. The colonists tried to evacuate, but their ships were slow and few, most never made it off the surface. Those who did were hunted down in orbit. When it was over, the planet was a dead rock, stripped of all resources. Even the atmosphere had been consumed. News of the disaster reached the Grand Assembly Hall within a day. The chamber erupted in chaos. Species that had been enemies for centuries now sat together in shared terror. Old grudges were forgotten in the face of extinction. Representative Al floated at the center of the debate, his body pulsing with colors that indicated extreme distress. "We must combine every ship we have, every weapon, every resource. Only together can we hope to survive." "Combine into what?" OK demanded. His arrogant tone from the previous assembly was gone, replaced by barely controlled fear. "Our combined fleet is nothing against these creatures. You saw the reports, 200 ships destroyed in hours. Then we build more ships, we develop new weapons. We must do something." An elderly representative from a species called the silicate spoke next. Their kind was ancient, predating even the old records say that desperation drove our ancestors to create weapons of terrible power, weapons that could destroy stars themselves. Perhaps such measures are needed again. Those weapons were banned for good reason, another delegate argued. They cause damage that never heals. The scars they leave in space are still visible 10,000 years later. Better scars than extinction. The debate continued for hours without resolution. Meanwhile, the advanced 3 more colonies fell in the next week, then 5 more, then 7. Each hive ship seemed to grow stronger after consuming a world. New weapons appeared on their surfaces, technology stolen from the species they had devoured. They learned and adapted with terrifying speed. Commander Sarah monitored all of this from her command center aboard the Awakening. There was now 80% operational, ahead of the desperate schedule she had demanded, but it still was not ready for combat. Show me the latest projections, she ordered. Doctor pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. Red markers indicated positions. They were spreading like an infection across the spiral arm. At their current rate of advance, they will reach Core Council space in approximately 40 days, reported the major population centers, including the will be under direct threat within 60 days. Admiral studied the map with professional interest. They're not moving randomly, they're targeting population centers, maximizing their consumption, intelligent behavior. They remember, Sarah said quietly. Old war taught them. They know how to break civilizations now. A communication alert sounded from her console. Sarah checked the incoming signal and frowned. It's from the Council, she said. They're requesting a meeting with Earth's representatives. Raised an eyebrow. The same council that laughed at us 2 weeks ago. The very same, it seems. Desperation has improved their manners. The meeting took place via secure holographic link. Sarah found herself facing a panel of the council's most senior officials. OK was there, along with Or and representatives from a dozen major species. Gone was the mockery and contempt. Their eyes held only fear and a tiny spark of hope. Commander OK began, his voice carefully respectful. Thank you for accepting this communication. Sarah nodded but said nothing. She wanted to hear what they would offer. As you are no doubt aware, the galaxy faces a threat unlike any in recent history. They have returned, and our defenses are proving insufficient. I have been following the situation, Sarah replied evenly. Then you understand that extraordinary measures are needed. The Council has voted to offer Earth full membership, effective immediately. All restrictions on your technology and military development will be lifted. In exchange, we ask that humanity contribute whatever forces you can spare to the defense effort. It was an unprecedented offer. Species typically waited centuries for full Council membership, but Sarah knew it was not generosity that motivated them, it was desperation. That is a generous offer, she said, but I am curious. 2 weeks ago your assembly called Earth primitive and laughed at our technology. What has changed? OK shifted uncomfortably. We may have underestimated certain aspects of Earth's capabilities. May have, Admiral or spoke up, cutting through the diplomatic dancing. Let us speak plainly, Commander. Our intelligence services have noticed certain anomalies regarding Earth that we previously ignored, energy signatures that don't match your official technology, communications that use encryption we cannot break, ships that seem to move faster than their specifications allow. Our intelligence is limited, okay, added, but it suggests that Earth may be more advanced than we believed. If this is true, we need your help. We are offering everything we have in return. Sarah let the silence stretch for a long moment. She thought about 300 years of hiding, 300 years of accepting mockery, while humanity prepared in secret. Part of her wanted to refuse to let the council face the consequences of their arrogance alone. But that was not why humanity had built the awakening. They had built it to protect, not to punish. I will take your offer to my government, she finally said. You will have our answer within 7 days. The holographic link ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts, and joined her a moment later. Well said, that was unexpected. Not really, replied. When you're drowning, you'll grab any hand that reaches for you, even if it belongs to someone you once kicked. Sarah turned to face her colleagues. Contact director, I need a complete status report on the awakening by tomorrow morning and reach out to our people on the hidden colonies. It's time to start bringing everything together. Are we really going to help them? Asked. After everything they've done, we're going to help everyone, Sarah said. That's why we built what we built. The council made themselves our enemies, but they are the enemy of all life. We cannot let old grudges doom the galaxy. Nodded slowly. And once this is over, once the galaxy sees what we've been hiding, then everything changes. But that's a problem for later. Right now, we have a war to prepare for. Deep within the awakening, director received the orders and began pushing her teams even harder. The ship's massive frame echoed with the sounds of construction as thousands of workers labored around the clock. The weapons systems were the priority. The awakening carried armaments that used principles of physics the council had declared impossible. Gravity manipulation devices that could crush matter into singularities, energy projectors that drew power directly from the fabric of space-time, missiles that phased through normal reality, making them impossible to intercept. Each system required careful calibration. A mistake could destroy the ship from within, but there was no time for the slow, careful approach that safety demanded. We're pushing the reactors beyond their tested limits, chief engineer reported during a status meeting. If we're wrong about the calculations, we could create a feedback loop that would vaporize everything within 1,000,000 km. What are the odds? Asked. About 3% chance of catastrophic failure. Considered this. For a moment, 3% is acceptable. Continue. The acceleration. Nodded and returned to his work. He understood the stakes. Everyone aboard the awakening understood. They were racing against extinction itself. Across human space, similar scenes played out at dozens of hidden facilities. Shipyards that had operated in secret for generations now produced vessels at maximum capacity. Training bases activated their reserve populations, calling up soldiers who had spent their lives preparing for a war they hoped would never come. The scale of humanity's hidden military was staggering. While the council believed Earth possessed perhaps 50 combat vessels, the true number was closer to 3,000, each ship was smaller than the Awakening but far more advanced than anything in Council space, and there were other weapons too, things that humanity had hoped never to use. Things that made even the band startling. Devices of the ancient wars look primitive. 7 days after the Council's offer, Commander requested another holographic meeting. This time she had company. Admiral stood at her side along with 4 other officers the Council had never seen before. We have considered your offer, Sarah began. Earth accepts full Council membership and the lifting of all technological restrictions. Relief washed across the faces of the Council representatives. Okay, actually. Smiled. In return, Sarah continued, we will contribute our full military capability to the defense effort. Your full capability, or asked, how many ships can Earth provide? Sarah exchanged a glance with before answering. Before I answer that question, I need to inform the Council of certain facts that have been previously concealed. The relief on the Council's faces turned to confusion. For the past 300 years, Earth has deliberately misrepresented its technological and military development. To the galactic community, we did this for survival. We observed how the Council treats species that grow too powerful too quickly, and we chose to hide our true capabilities rather than risk destruction. Okay's expression darkened. You deceived us. We protected ourselves. There is a difference. Sarah straightened her shoulders. The truth is that Earth's technology is significantly more advanced than we have shown. Our population is larger, our military is stronger, and we have resources that the Council never suspected. How much stronger or demanded? His military mind was already calculating possibilities. In 3 days we will demonstrate. I am sending coordinates for a location. Empty space where the Council can observe without risk. Bring your sensor equipment, bring witnesses. What you see will answer your questions. The meeting ended with the Council in confused uproar. Sarah did not wait for their response. She had preparations to make. The next 3 days were the longest of her life. Final systems came online. Aboard the Awakening, test flights of the smaller craft filled the hidden shipyards. Messages coordinated the timing across human space. When the appointed hour arrived, Sarah stood on the bridge of the Awakening alongside her command crew. The ship had been moved to the demonstration coordinates through a series of dimensional folds that left no trail for any sensor to follow. The Council observation fleet has arrived. Communications officer reported 47 vessels from 23 species. They're scanning the area. Let them scan, Sarah said. They won't find us until we want to be found. She looked around the bridge at her officers. These men and women represented the best humanity had to offer. They had trained their entire lives for this moment. Many of them would not survive the war to come, but all of them understood why they were here. 300 years ago, Sarah said, speaking loud enough for the entire bridge crew to hear, our ancestors made a choice. They chose to hide our strength so that we could grow in peace. They endured mockery and dismissal so that future generations could survive. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today we honor their sacrifice. Today we show the galaxy what humanity has become. Today we reveal the Awakening. She turned to her navigation officer. Drop the dimensional cloak. Full Power to all systems, let them see us. Reality rippled around the awakening as the ship emerged from its hidden state. One moment the Council fleet was scanning empty space, the next they found themselves facing the largest vessel any living being had ever seen. 47 km of gleaming metal and impossible technology hung in the void before them. The awakening's hull caught starlight and reflected it like a mirror. Its weapons arrays hummed with contained power. Its engines pulsed with energies that Council sensors could not even classify. For a long moment no one spoke, no one moved across 47 ships and 23 species. Every being simply stared at what they were seeing. Then slowly the realization began to spread. Earth had been hiding something beyond their worst fears or greatest hopes. Humanity was not a primitive species to be laughed at and dismissed. Humanity was something else entirely. And now, with the advancing and the galaxy facing extinction, that hidden giant had finally opened its eyes. The silence that descended across the Council fleet would spread across the entire galaxy in the days to come. It was the silence of a universe that had suddenly discovered it did not understand itself as well as it had believed. And it was only the beginning. The Council observation fleet drifted in space, their crews frozen in shock at what hung before them. Sensor systems across all 47 ships struggled to process data that contradicted everything their operators believed possible. Admiral or stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory, staring at the holographic display that showed the awakening in full detail. His four eyes blinked repeatedly as his mind tried to accept what he was seeing. That ship, he said slowly, is larger than our largest station. His tactical officer, a young named L, worked frantically at his console. Sir, the energy readings they don't make sense. The power output we're detecting would require antimatter reactors the size of small moons, but our scans show no such systems aboard. Then where is the power coming from? L shook his head helplessly. Unknown, sir. The technology is beyond anything in our databases. Similar conversations were happening across the entire observation fleet. Scientists and military officers from 24 species all reached the same conclusion. The ship before them should not exist according to their understanding of physics, yet there it was, undeniable and impossible. Commander Sarah's voice broke the silence transmitted across all frequencies. This is Commander of the Earth vessel Awakening. We apologize for the shock, but we felt a demonstration was necessary. What you see before you represents 300 years of human scientific advancement conducted in secret for reasons I believe you now understand. No one responded. The silence stretched on. We understand that trust will need to be rebuilt, Sarah continued. We deceive the galactic community for our survival, but the threat we now face requires unity, not recrimination. The do not care about our political differences. They will consume us all equally. Finally, a response came from the flagship. Or's voice was strained but controlled. Commander, your vessel appears to be a carrier class. What forces does it transport? Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The old warrior had recovered quickly and was already thinking tactically. The Awakening carries 400 attack fighters, 200 bomber craft, 50 heavy assault ships, and various support vessels. In Addition, the ship itself mounts 12 primary weapon systems capable of engaging targets at ranges your sensors cannot yet detect. She paused to let that information sink in. This is not the full extent of Earth's military capability. We have additional forces that will join the defense effort as needed. Additional forces or voice rose slightly. How much more? That information will be shared at the appropriate time. For now, I suggest we focus on immediate planning that will not wait while we adjust to new realities. Across the observation fleet, stunned silence gave way to urgent activity. Officers transmitted recordings back to their governments. Scientists argued about the implications of what they had witnessed. Diplomats struggled to process the political ramifications. The galaxy, as they knew it, had just changed forever. 3 days later, an emergency session of the full Galactic Council convened at the Grand Assembly Hall. Every species with membership sent their most senior representatives. The observation galleries were packed with non-member species seeking information. The atmosphere was a mixture of fear, anger, and desperate hope. Commanders stood at the central speaking platform, the same place where Earth's membership requests had been rejected and mocked for decades. She wore the formal uniform of Earth's military command, a simple dark blue suit with silver markings that indicated her rank. Representatives of the council, she began, I come before you today to explain certain actions that humanity has taken over the past 3 centuries. I ask only that you hear the full explanation before passing judgment. Okay rose from his seat. Explanation. You deceived every species in this chamber. You made us believe you were primitives while secretly building weapons of war. What possible explanation could justify such betrayal? Survival, Sarah replied calmly. The same motivation that drives every species. Here, she activated a holographic display that showed a timeline of galactic history. When humanity first developed faster than light travel, we did not immediately contact the wider galaxy. Instead, we observed. We studied your histories, your politics, your treatment of emerging species. The display changed to show specific incidents. The who developed advanced energy weapons. There was destroyed by coalition of council members who feared their growing power. The Seventh Union, who created efficient terraforming technology. They were absorbed by the Empire when they refused to share their methods. The Crystalline Collective, who simply vanished from all records after demonstrating certain computational capabilities. Murmurs of discomfort spread through the assembly. These were not events that most species like to remember. We saw a pattern, Sarah continued. Species that revealed advanced capabilities too early did not survive. The Council did not welcome innovation. It suppressed it. Any threat to the established power structure was eliminated. Okay, attempted to interrupt, but Sarah pressed on. So humanity chose a different path. We would be weak. We would be harmless. We would accept your mockery and your rejection with humble smiles, and in secret we would grow strong enough that when we finally revealed ourselves, no one could destroy us. You speak as if we would have attacked you without provocation. Another representative called out. Sarah turned to face the speaker. Would you not have, if Earth had revealed technology superior to yours 300 years ago, would the Council have welcomed us as equals, Or would you have demanded we share our secrets and destroyed us when we refused? No one answered. The silence was answer. Enough. We do not blame you for what you would have done, Sarah said. You acted according to your nature and your history. We simply chose not to be victims of it. Now circumstances have changed. The threat in all life in this galaxy, our old games of power and deception are meaningless against such an enemy. She straightened her shoulders and looked across the assembly. Earth offers its full military alliance in the war against the we will fight alongside you. We will share certain technologies that may help in the defense effort, and when this crisis has passed, we will work with the Council to build a more honest relationship between our peoples. Or spoke up from the military section of the assembly. You mentioned additional forces beyond the carrier we observed. Can you provide specifics? Sarah nodded and changed the holographic display. A new image appeared showing a star map dotted with hundreds of blue markers. Earth maintains 37 hidden colonies throughout the galaxy. Combined population is approximately 12 billion. Humans, our total military force, includes the Awakening, 3,200 smaller combat vessels and various support and logistics ships. The chamber erupted in noise. 3,000 ships was more than the combined fleets of most species in the Council. For a species that had been dismissed as primitives, it was an impossible number. These forces are already mobilizing. Sarah continued. Once the noise subsided, they will arrive at defensive positions within 2 weeks. The Awakening itself is prepared to engage forces immediately once command coordination is established. Representative Al of the Membrane Collective floated forward. This is considerable force, Commander, but they destroyed 200 of our ships in hours. What makes you believe your vessels will fare better? A fair question. Sarah pulled up technical specifications on the display. Our ships utilize weapons and defensive systems based on physics principles that the Council has not developed. I will not claim that we are invincible, but our weapons are designed specifically for targets that conventional armaments cannot harm. She showed imagery from long-range observation of Hive ships. The organic vessels regenerate damage faster than conventional weapons can inflict it. Our primary weapons operate on principles that prevent regeneration at the subatomic level. Additionally, our shields function in dimensional layers that the energy waves cannot penetrate. You know this for certain, or asked? We know it in theory. Actual combat will be the true test, but our scientists have studied the extensively using long-range observation. We believe our technology gives us a significant advantage. The assembly continued for hours. Questions were asked and answered. Accusations were made and addressed. Gradually, the anger in the chamber gave way to something closer to hope. Earth was not a savior. The war against the would still be brutal and costly, but for the first time since the ancient enemy had awakened, the galaxy had reason to believe survival was possible. When the formal session ended, Sarah found herself surrounded by representatives seeking private conversations. She handled each one with patience and diplomatic skill. Admiral, or was the last to approach her. The old warrior studied her face with his 4 eyes, searching for something. 300 years, he said quietly. Your ancestors began this deception before my great-grandfather was born. You played Game across generations that requires patience beyond anything I have encountered. Sarah nodded. Humanity can be patient. When survival requires it, we can also be decisive when the moment demands action. I see that. Or paused. I commanded forces that mocked your ships. I dismissed Earth as irrelevant in countless strategic assessments. I was wrong. You saw what we wanted you to see. There is no shame in being deceived. When the deception was crafted specifically for you, the old admiral almost smiled, perhaps, but I find myself wondering what else humanity might be hiding. What other surprises are you keeping for the appropriate moment? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Some secrets must remain secrets, Admiral, but I promise you this: when humanity commits to an alliance, we honor it. They are the enemy of all life until they are defeated. Earth's full strength is at your command. Or considered this for a long moment. Then he extended one of his 4 hands in a gesture that crossed species boundaries. Then let us make war together, Commander, and may our enemies learn to regret awakening. Sarah clasped his hand firmly. Agreed. 2 weeks later, the combined fleet gathered at Rally Point Omega, position in empty space chosen for its strategic value. Ships from 49 species formed a defensive formation that stretched across 3 million km. At the center of the formation floated the Awakening, dwarfing everything around it. Sarah stood on the bridge watching the fleet assemble through the main. Ships of every design imaginable moved into position. Some were sleek and elegant, others were massive and brutal. A few were so alien in construction that they seemed to defy logic itself. All units have reported in. Communications officer announced total count is 11,418. Combat vessels plus support ships. Admiral studied the formation with professional appreciation. It's not enough. Against 47 hive ships, we need 3 times this number. Then we'll have to fight 3 times as hard. Sarah replied. Earth's additional forces are still in transit. They'll arrive within 3 days, and if the attack before then we hold the line with what we have. A warning chime sounded from the sensor station. Lieutenant Park, the sensor officer, looked up with alarm in her eyes. Commander, we're detecting emergent signatures, multiple contacts at extreme range. How many? Park worked her console frantically. 17 distinct signatures. Configuration matches hive ships. Sarah felt her heartbeat quicken, but her voice remained steady. Time to intercept. At current speed, the force will reach our position in approximately 6 hours. 6 hours, not enough time for reinforcements to arrive. Not enough time for the fleet to relocate to a better position. The battle for the galaxy's survival was about to begin. Sarah opened a channel to the entire combined fleet. All commands, this is Commander of the Awakening. Enemy contact has been detected. 17 hive ships approaching. They will reach our position in 6 hours. This is not a drill. Across 11,000 ships, crews that had been preparing for this moment sprung into action. Weapons charged, shields activated, fighters launched. From carrier decks, the fleet transformed from a collection of vessels into a single fighting force. All small craft are to remain within shield coverage until my command. Sarah continued. Larger vessels will form the primary battle line. The Awakening will take point position. We will be the tip of the spear. Or's voice came over a Private channel, Commander, if your ship is destroyed, we lose our most powerful weapon. If we hide behind the fleet, we lose the war. The Awakening was built for this purpose, Admiral. Today she fulfills her destiny. Sarah closed the channel and turned to her crew. These were the men and women who had trained for years to operate the most powerful vessel humanity had ever created. They looked back at her with determination and trust. You all know what's at stake, she said. Behind us are billions of lives across hundreds of world species that have existed for civilizations that took thousands of years to build. They want to consume all of it. Today we teach them that some things cannot be eaten. She moved to her command chair and sat down. All stations report ready status. The bridge crew worked their consoles with practiced efficiency. One by one, system confirmations appeared on the main display. Weapons online, shields at maximum, engines ready for combat maneuvers. The Awakening was fully operational for the first time in its existence, and in 6 hours it would finally show the galaxy what humanity could truly do. Sarah watched the distant specks of light that marked the approaching 17 hive ships, each one capable of consuming a star system, each one containing billions of hungry organisms that knew only the drive to feed. 300 years of preparation, she said quietly. 300 years leading to this moment. She reached out and touched a control that activated the ship's internal communication system. Her words would be heard by every human aboard the Awakening. All hands, this is the commander. The enemy is approaching. In 6 hours we go to war. I want every system at 110%. I want every crew member at their best. We are the Awakening. We are humanity's answer to the darkness, and today we fight. Across the massive ship, her crew responded with cheers that echoed through corridors and chambers. The sound of human voices, raised in defiance, rang through the vessel that represented everything they had built and everything they believed in. The galaxy was watching. The council species waited to see if Earth's promises were true. The advanced, confident in their hunger and their power, and at the center of it all, floating in the void between stars, the Awakening prepared to fulfill the purpose for which it had been created. The silence that had fallen when the ship first revealed itself was about to be broken by the sound of war. The hive ships emerged from the darkness like hungry gods, 17 mountains of flesh and stolen metal, each one larger than most stations in council space. Their surfaces writhed with constant motion as billions of organisms crawled across their skin. Commander Sarah watched them approach on the main. At maximum magnification, she could see details that turned her stomach. The hive ships were covered in the wreckage of consumed vessels, hull plates from warships, engine components from membrane, collective transports, even what appeared to be living beings partially absorbed and frozen in eternal agony on the ship's surfaces. Range to enemy force, she asked. Lieutenant Park checked her sensors. 400,000 km and closing. They will be in our primary weapons range in 12 minutes. Signal the fleet. All vessels hold position until my command. Let them come to us. Waiting was the hardest part. Across the combined fleet, crews stood ready at their stations. Fingers hovered over firing controls. Eyes watched readouts and displays. Hearts beat faster as the Gap between the two forces slowly closed. Admiral Orr's voice came over the command channel. Commander, our long range sensors show they are beginning to separate smaller organisms from their main bodies. Estimated count is over 50,000 attack creatures. Sarah nodded. This matched the pattern from previous attacks. The smaller organisms would swarm enemy fleets while the hive ships moved in for the kill. All fighter wings prepare for launch. She ordered. You will engage the swarm and keep it away from our capital ships. Do not pursue too far from the fleet. That will try to draw you out of shield coverage. 800 human pilots acknowledged the order. They sat in cockpits throughout the Awakening's vast hangar bays, ready to throw themselves against an enemy that had consumed civilizations. Every one of them knew the risks. Every one of them had volunteered anyway. The range counter continued to drop. 300,000 km, 200,000. Energy spike detected. Park called out. Multiple hive ships are charging. Weapons. Identify target. Park worked her console. They're targeting our right flank. The Sarah opened a channel to the commander. Admiral, incoming fire directed at your position. Recommend evasive maneuvers. The Admiral's response was proud. Do not run, Commander. Before Sarah could respond, the open fire, 17 beams of sickly green energy lanced across space, converging on the formation, the same energy wave that had disabled entire fleets in previous battles now struck the combined forces' strongest warships. For a terrible moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then one by one the vessels went dark. 37 ships, including admirals' flagship, simply stopped functioning. Their lights went out. Their engines died. They drifted, helpless and silent. Gasps of horror echoed through communication channels across the fleet. The energy weapon had worked exactly as it had before. Ships were dying before they could fire a single shot, but on the Awakening's bridge, Sarah remained calm. She had expected this. Helm, move us forward, interposed the Awakening between thee and the disabled vessels. Her ship surged ahead, its massive bulk moving with surprising grace. As it cleared the front line of the combined fleet, it drew the attention of every hive ship. 17 more beams of green energy struck the Awakening. They hit shields that operated on principles that had never encountered, layered barriers that existed partially outside normal space, absorbed and redirected the killing light. The ship shuddered but remained functional. Shield status, Sarah asked. Primary shields at 87%, the tactical officer reported. No breaches, no system failures. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The theoretical models had been correct. Human technology could resist weapons. Now it was time to see if human weapons could hurt thee in return. Target the lead hive ship, she ordered. All primary batteries full power. Fire. The Awakening's main weapons had never been tested in actual combat. They represented 3 centuries of scientific advancement. Theory turned into deadly reality when they fired. The results exceeded expectations. 12 beams of pure white energy erupted from this forward sections. They crossed the gap between the fleets in an instant, striking the lead hive ship with surgical precision. Where the beams hit, matter ceased to exist, not destroyed or burned or vaporized, simply erased from reality. The lead hive ship screamed. It was a sound that should have been impossible in the vacuum of space, but the awakening sensors detected it nonetheless, a psychic cry of pain and rage that echoed through the minds of every being in both fleets. Section of the hive ship nearly 3 kilometers wide had been removed, and, unlike previous damage that had suffered, this wound did not regenerate. The edges of the hole were clean and unchanging, the reality-altering nature of the attack prevented any repair. Direct hit, Park confirmed, target shows significant damage, no regeneration detected. Cheers erupted across the awakening. On the bridge, officers exchanged looks of triumph and relief. The weapons worked. Signal all Earth forces, Sarah ordered, begin full engagement. Show them what we can do. Throughout the combined fleet, human vessels that had been hidden among their allies revealed their true capabilities. Destroyers that appeared obsolete suddenly matched the acceleration of the fastest fighters. Cruisers that seemed lightly armed deployed weapons arrays that had been concealed within their hulls. 3,000 human ships, all of them far more advanced than their appearances suggested, surged forward to engage them. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had witnessed. In 10,000 years, human fighters dove into the swarm of organisms, their weapons cutting through the alien creatures with devastating efficiency. Where Council weapons had struggled to kill the rapidly regenerating monsters, human technology left wounds that could not heal. Wing Commander Jackson led his squadron through the heart of the swarm. His fighter twisted and turned, avoiding grasping tendrils and snapping jaws. Each pull of his trigger sent another creature tumbling into the void, its internal structures disrupted beyond repair. Remember your training, he called to his pilots. Short burst, precise targeting, don't waste energy on dead shots. Around him, 700 human fighters danced through a nightmare of alien flesh. They were outnumbered nearly 70-1, but their technology and training gave them advantages they had never faced. Meanwhile, the larger vessels focused on the hive ships themselves. Human cruisers worked in coordinated groups, concentrating their fire on specific targets. One by one, the massive enemy vessels accumulated damage they could not repair, but they were not helpless. They adapted with terrifying speed. After losing 2 hive ships to the Awakening's primary weapons, the remaining 15 changed their tactics. They scattered, refusing to present clustered targets. They began moving more erratically, making precision shots difficult, and they focused their attacks on the smaller human vessels rather than the they could not harm. Human ships began to die. The destroyer, Relentless, took a direct hit from 3 hive ships simultaneously. Its shields, advanced as they were, could not withstand the combined assault. The ship broke apart, its crew of 400 dying in an instant. The cruiser Defiance lasted longer, its captain fighting desperately to keep his vessel alive. He destroyed 2 swarm creatures for every hit his ship took, but eventually the damage accumulated beyond repair. The Defiance went down with all hands, taking one final swarm of enemies. With it, Sarah watched the casualty reports scroll across her display. Each name was someone who had dedicated their life to this moment. Each loss was a wound that would take years to heal, but she could not afford to mourn. Now the battle was far from over. Status of the vessels, she asked. Still disabled, Park reported. but some are showing signs of power returning. The weapon seems to cause temporary rather than permanent shutdown. Get repair crews to them. Every ship we can bring back into the fight matters. On the main display, the tactical situation was becoming clearer. The human fleet had destroyed 4 hive ships and damaged 3 more, but the cost had been significant, nearly 200. Human vessels were gone, thousands of fighters had been lost in the swarm battle, and they were learning. Each minute that passed, they became more effective at countering human tactics. Their swarm organisms began to anticipate fighter movements. Their hive ships coordinated their attacks with greater precision. Admiral approached Sarah's command chair. We're winning, but not fast enough. At this rate, we'll exhaust our forces before we destroy theirs. Sarah nodded grimly. She had been running the same calculations. What about the Council fleet? Starting to recover. About 60% of the disabled vessels are back online, but their weapons still can't harm the hive ships directly. They're limited to engaging the swarm. It was something, but not enough. Sarah needed a new approach. She studied the tactical display, searching for patterns in the behavior. The hive ships were not moving randomly. They were positioning themselves in a specific formation, one that maximized their coverage while minimizing their vulnerability to concentrated fire. Then she saw it. Formation had a weak point, a gap in their coverage where a ship could potentially reach the center of their group. It was narrow and dangerous, but it was there. Helm plot a course through the enemy formation, maximum speed. Her helmsman turned to look at her with surprise. Through the formation. Commander. Yes, the hive ships are designed to focus outward, not inward. If we can get to the center of their group, we can engage multiple targets at close range before they can reposition. Frown. That's an incredible risk. If we get trapped in there, we won't. The awakening is faster than anything they have seen. We go in, destroy as many as we can, and break out before they can react. It was a desperate plan, but desperate times required desperate measures. All hands prepare for high-speed combat maneuvers. Sarah announced, we're about to do something they won't expect. Awakening's engines roared to life with power that shook the massive vessel. Ship 47 km long should not have been able to accelerate like a fighter. But the awakening was not bound by normal limitations. The shot forward, punching through the swarm with shields blazing. Smaller organisms bounced off its hull like insects against a windshield. The hive ships tried to track the sudden movement, but they were too slow. In seconds, the awakening had penetrated the enemy formation. It now sat at the center of a ring of 11 surviving hive ships, each one a massive target that could not escape. All weapons continuous fire. Pick your targets and don't stop shooting. The awakening became a sun of destruction. 12 primary weapons and hundreds of secondary batteries opened fire in every direction. White beams of reality erasing energy lanced out, striking hive ships that were too large and too close to dodge. One hive ship died, then another, then a third screamed their psychic rage. They tried to concentrate their fire on the ship in their midst, but the awakening shields held. They tried to crush the vessel with their superior numbers, but every time they closed in, they exposed themselves to devastating counter fire. 4 more hive ships fell. 7 remained, then they did something no one expected. The 7 surviving hive ships began to move toward each other. Their organic surfaces reached out, connecting, merging within minutes. What had been 7 separate vessels became one. The combined hive ship was over 400 km long. It was a living thing of impossible size, a moon of hungry flesh and stolen technology. "Oh God," someone on the bridge whispered. The merged hive ship did not attack immediately. It seemed to be stabilizing, integrating the different parts into a single whole. But Sarah knew they had only minutes before this new abomination turned its full attention on them. "All ships concentrate fire on the merged target," she ordered. "Everything we have, human and council vessels, are like open fire." Thousands of weapons hammered at the monstrous creature. Human reality erasers carved wounds in its surface. Council weapons, less effective but still adding to the assault, blasted away at exposed sections. The merged hive ship shuddered under the assault. Pieces broke away, whole sections died. But it was too large, too massive, too filled with stolen energy to die easily. And then it fired back. The beam that erupted from the merged creature was not green like the normal weapon. It was black, a column of absolute darkness that seemed to consume light itself. It swept across the battlefield like the hand of an angry god. Wherever the black beam touched, ships simply ceased to exist, not disabled, not destroyed. Annihilated completely, leaving not even debris behind. 200 council vessels vanished in the first sweep. Another 100 human ships died in the second. The beam was cutting through the combined fleet like a scythe through wheat. Sarah watched in horror as ships containing thousands of lives blinked out of existence. Nothing she had built, nothing she had prepared could stop this weapon. Commander Park shouted, new contacts emerging from hyperspace. Sarah tore her attention away from the carnage. Identify. It's our reinforcements. Earth's secondary fleet has arrived. On the tactical display, over 2,000 new icons appeared, human ships that had been racing from hidden bases across the galaxy had finally reached the battle. They emerged from hyperspace behind the merged hive ship, positioning themselves perfectly for an assault on the creature's undefended rear. Leading the reinforcement fleet was a ship that made even the Awakening look small. It was Earth's second, the Prometheus, a vessel that had been under construction for 50 years and had only become operational 3 days ago. Commander, a new voice came over the communication channel. "This is Admiral of the Prometheus. We apologize for the delay. Traffic was terrible." Despite everything, Sarah found herself laughing. Better late than never. "Admiral, please say hello to our large friend." "With pleasure." The Prometheus and its accompanying fleet opened fire on the merged hive ship's rear sections. The creature, focused on destroying the original fleet, could not respond quickly enough. Thousands of weapons struck it from behind, finding vulnerable areas that its merger had created. The merged hive ship tried to try to bring its black beam to bear on the new threat, but in doing so, it exposed its front to the Awakening and the surviving vessels of the original fleet. Caught between two forces, the monstrous creature finally began to die. Pieces the size of cities broke away and tumbled into space. Its scream of rage and pain echoed through the minds of every being within light years. It took another hour, but Eventually, the merged hive ship fell. Silent, its vast bulk hung in space. Dark and dead, a monument to the battle that had raged around it. The had been defeated at tremendous cost, but defeated nonetheless. Commander Sarah slumped in her chair, exhaustion washing over her, around her. The bridge crew was silent, processing what they had just survived. Displays showed the aftermath of the 11,000 ships that had started the battle. Fewer than 4,000 remained functional. Hundreds of thousands of beings had died from dozens of species. The price of victory had been higher than anyone had imagined, but they had won. The swarm in this sector had been destroyed. The galaxy had proven that it could stand against the ancient enemy and survive. Sarah opened a channel to the entire surviving fleet. This is Commander. The battle is over. We have won. She paused, thinking of all the lives lost, all the ships destroyed, all the families that would grieve. But this is not the end. More exist elsewhere in the galaxy. They will come for us again. Today we prove that they can be beaten. Tomorrow we must prove we can beat them again and again until the threat is ended forever. She straightened in her chair, finding new strength in the knowledge that humanity had kept its promise. Today we fought as allies. Today we bled together and died together. Today the galaxy showed that when we stand united, nothing can defeat us. Remember this day. Remember what we achieved, and remember that this is just the beginning. Across thousands of ships, crews of dozens of species heard her words. Many wept for fallen comrades. Others cheered in exhausted celebration. All of them understood that they had witnessed something historic. The silence that had descended when Earth first revealed its hidden power was broken. In its place was a new sound. It was the sound of a galaxy united, battered and wounded, but unbroken. And it was only the beginning. The weeks following the Battle of Rally Point Omega were filled with grief and celebration in equal measure. Across the galaxy, species mourned their dead while simultaneously marveling at their survival. Memorial services were held on thousands of worlds. Names of the fallen were carved into monuments that would stand for generations. Commander Sarah attended as many of these ceremonies as she could. She stood with grieving families and spoke words of comfort that felt inadequate against the weight of their loss. She accepted thanks from species that had once mocked humanity, thanks that felt equally uncomfortable to receive. She attended a massive memorial that honored the 37 ships disabled. The battle's opening moments, though none of those crews had died, they all carried the shame of having been rendered helpless. They were a proud people, and that helplessness had wounded them deeply. Admiral met her after the ceremony. The old warrior looked older than he had before the battle, as if the weight of those moments when his ship had gone dark had aged him decades. "I owe you my life," he said quietly. "When your ship moved to protect us, I thought it was a foolish gesture. I was wrong." Sarah shook her head. "We protected our allies. Any of your ships would have done the same, perhaps, but we would not have been able to shield you as you shielded us that have built mighty fleets. Commander, we have conquered worlds and broken empires, but in that moment we were as helpless as children." He paused, struggling with words that did not come easily to his proud nature. "We have mocked Earth for 300 years. We called you primitive. We called you weak. We were fools. You saw what we wanted you to see, Sarah." replied, echoing words she had spoken before. Do not punish yourself for our deception. Studied her face with his 4 eyes. You are generous with your forgiveness. I am not certain that would be so forgiving. If our positions were reversed, then perhaps they can learn something from humanity. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the first step toward building something better. Similar conversations happened across the galaxy as the full implications of Earth's revelation sank in. Species that had dismissed humanity as irrelevant now looked at them with new eyes. Some felt gratitude, others felt fear, a few felt anger at having been deceived for so long. The Galactic Council convened 3 months after the battle to address the changed political landscape. The Grand Assembly Hall was filled with representatives from every member species, plus observers from dozens of non-member worlds. The atmosphere was tense with uncertainty about what would come next. Okay, speaking as chair of the council, opened the session with uncharacteristic humility. We gather today in a galaxy that has been transformed. The threat continues, though diminished. Our alliances have been tested and proven, and among us sits a species that has revealed capabilities beyond anything we imagined. He turned to face the human delegation, which now occupied seats of full membership for the first time. The question before this assembly is simple. What does humanity's revelation mean for the future of the Council and the galaxy it governs? Commander rose from her seat. She wore the same formal uniform she had worn when she first explained Earth's deception, but she carried herself differently now. The weight of leadership sat more comfortably on her shoulders. Representatives of the Council, she began, I understand the concern that fills this chamber. Humanity has lied to you for 3 centuries. We have hidden military capabilities that rival or exceed your own. You wonder what our intentions are. You wonder if we mean to use our power against you. She paused, letting the tension build. To answer those questions, I must tell you something about humanity that you may not understand. We are a young species. We have existed for only a fraction of the time most of your peoples have walked among the stars. But in our short existence, we have learned something that older species sometimes forget. Sarah activated a holographic display that showed images from human history, wars and conflicts, rises and falls of civilizations, moments of terrible darkness and incredible light. Humanity has a violent past, she continued. We have fought among ourselves for resources, for territory, for ideas. We have committed atrocities that shame us to remember. We have come close to destroying ourselves more than once. Images shifted to show something different, hands reaching across divides, treaties being signed, former enemies building together. But we have also learned to overcome our worst impulses. We have built bridges across hatred. We have turned enemies into allies. We have discovered that cooperation, though harder than conflict, creates something more lasting. She turned to face the assembled representatives directly. When our ancestors first looked out at the galaxy, they saw a choice. They could reveal their true strength and attempt to dominate others through force, or they could hide their power and use the time to develop wisdom alongside capability. They chose the second path. Sarah pulled up a new display showing the timeline of Earth's secret development for 300 years. Our Scientists and philosophers worked. Together, we built weapons, yes, but we also built something more important. We built a philosophy of how power should be used. And what philosophy is that? Representative Al asked. That power exists to protect, not to dominate. That strength means nothing without the wisdom to use it justly, that the true measure of a civilization is not what it can destroy, but what it can create. Sarah took a deep breath before continuing. Humanity has no interest in ruling the galaxy. We have no desire to replace one hierarchy of powerful species with another. What we want is something simpler. We want a galaxy where every species can develop according to its own nature, where innovation is celebrated rather than feared, where younger civilizations are mentored rather than suppressed. She gestured toward the window that showed the stars beyond the assembly hall. They are still out there. Our victory at Rally Point Omega destroyed one swarm, but intelligence suggests others exist in distant regions. The threat to all life in the galaxy is not over. It may never be truly over. We face this threat better together than apart. The battle proved that human technology saved lives, but so did courage and membrane collective sacrifice. Each species brought something essential to the fight. That is how it should always be. Sarah returned her attention to the assembly. I propose a new charter for the council, one that enshrines the principle of equality among species, one that prevents more powerful civilizations from suppressing weaker ones, one that creates a true alliance where every voice matters and every contribution is valued. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives were enthusiastic about the proposal, others were suspicious. A few, particularly those from species that had benefited most from the old order, were openly hostile. OK called for order and turned to Sarah. Commander, what you propose would fundamentally transform the council. Such changes cannot be made quickly or easily. I understand, Sarah replied. Humanity is patient. We waited 300 years for the right moment to reveal ourselves. We can wait for the galaxy to accept a new way of existing together. But the offer is genuine and it stands. Over the following months, intense negotiations reshaped the political landscape of the galaxy. The new charter Sarah had proposed went through hundreds of revisions as species argued over details and principles. Progress was slow, frustrating, and occasionally seemed impossible. But it continued. Meanwhile, the war against the expanded intelligence gathered from the defeated swarm revealed the locations of other hive concentrations scattered across the galaxy. Combined fleets now operating with unprecedented coordination launched campaigns to neutralize these threats before they could grow. The Awakening and Prometheus led many of these campaigns. Human technology proved decisive in battle after battle, but increasingly it was the combined strength of multiple species that achieved victory. Council vessels that had once been useless against the were equipped with human weapon systems. Training programs taught tactics that worked against the alien biology. The alliance grew stronger with each engagement. 2 years after the Battle of Rally Point Omega, the Galactic Council, a new charter. The document enshrined principles that would have been unthinkable just years before: equality among species regardless of technological development, protection for emerging civilizations, free exchange of scientific knowledge, with appropriate safeguards. It was not perfect, no document created by committee ever could be, but it represented something new, a commitment to cooperation that went beyond me. Alliance against a common enemy. Commander Sarah stood at the signing ceremony, watching representatives from over 1,000 species add their marks to the charter. The process took hours, but she did not mind. Each signature represented a choice, a species choosing to be part of something larger than itself. When the last signature was complete, OK approached her. The ambassador had changed over the past 2 years. His arrogance had mellowed into something closer to confidence. His contempt for lesser species had transformed into something approaching respect. It is done, he said. A new era begins. Sarah nodded. The hard part comes next, living up to the promises we've made. You speak from experience. She smiled slightly. Humanity made promises to itself long ago, promises about what kind of civilization we wanted to be. Keeping those promises has been the work of generations. It never gets easier, but it is always worth doing. OK considered this. Tell me something, Commander. In all your planning and preparation, did your ancestors ever imagine this moment? Galaxy united under a charter of equality. Sarah thought about the question carefully before answering. They hoped for it. That's why they built the weapons they built, not to conquer, but to be strong enough that conquest would never be necessary. They believed that if humanity could survive long enough, could grow wise enough, we could help create something better than what existed before. She looked out at the assembly, at the representatives of 1,000 species, learning to work together. I think they would be proud of what we've accomplished, not because of the ships or the weapons, but because we use them to protect rather than destroy. On Earth, news of the charter signing sparked celebrations that lasted for days. For the first time in 300 years, humanity's true history was being taught openly. Children learned about the long deception, about the sacrifices made by generations who knew they would never see the fruits of their labor. Sarah's grandmother, now in her 90s, watched the celebrations from her home in what had once been called Japan. She had spent her entire adult life working on Project Sentinel, knowing that she would likely die before it was ever used. Now she lived to see not only its use, but its legacy. You did it, Sarah told her during a visit. All of you. Everything we achieved started with the choices your generation made. Her grandmother shook her head slowly. We only planted seeds. Your generation made them grow, and the generations to come will harvest what you have planted. She reached out and took Sarah's hand. Her grip was still surprisingly strong. Remember this feeling, she said. Remember what it means to see hope become reality. There will be dark days ahead. They are not fully defeated. New Alliance will face challenges that test it to breaking, but if you remember this feeling, you will find the strength to continue. Sarah held her grandmother's hand and felt the weight of history flowing between them. 300 years of hope and sacrifice, 300 years of playing a long game that most of the galaxy never even knew existed. And now finally the beginning of something new. The final swarm was destroyed 5 years after the Battle of Rally Point Omega. A combined fleet of 12,000 vessels, representing every major species in the galaxy, cornered the last Hive ships in a region of space far from any inhabited world. The battle lasted 3 days and cost the lives of thousands. But when it was over, the ancient enemy was gone, not merely dormant as it had been for 10,000 years, but truly destroyed. The hunger that had consumed civilizations beyond counting would never threaten the galaxy again. Commander Sarah, now Admiral, commanded the awakening throughout the campaign. When the final Hive ship fell, she stood on her bridge and watched the death throes of something that had terrified intelligent life for longer than most species could remember. All threats neutralized, Lieutenant Park reported, tears streaming down her face. They are extinct. Tears erupted across the bridge and throughout the fleet. After years of war and sacrifice, it was finally over. Admiral opened a channel to the entire combined fleet. Her voice was steady despite the emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. This is Admiral, the war against thee is over. We have won. She paused, thinking about all the lives lost, all the sacrifices made, all the long years of fighting that had led to this moment. This victory belongs to every species that fought alongside us. It belongs to the crews of every ship and the citizens of every world who supported the war effort. It belongs to those who died so that others might live. She thought about her grandmother who had passed away the previous year, about the generations of humans who had worked in secret, hoping for a future they would never see. And it belongs to those who came before, who built the foundations on which we stand, who believed that a better galaxy was possible, even when all evidence suggested otherwise. Sarah looked around at her bridge crew, at the people who had become family over years of shared danger and shared purpose. They looked back at her with love and respect that she knew she had not earned alone. They are gone, but our work is not done. We have a galaxy to rebuild, wounds to heal, a new future to create. The enemy we face together has been defeated. Now we must prove that we can build together just as well as we fought together. She straightened her shoulders and smiled, for the first time in years, feeling something like genuine hope. Let's go home. The combined fleet began its long journey back to Council space. Ships that had fought side by side for years traveled together now in peace. Crews exchanged messages across species barriers, sharing jokes and stories and memories of fallen comrades. The awakening led the way, as it had from the beginning. The massive ship that had once been humanity's greatest secret was now a symbol of something larger, a symbol of what could be achieved when species worked together instead of against each other. On the bridge, Admiral looked out at the stars and thought about the future. The new galactic charter was working better than anyone had expected. Trade flourished between species that had once been rivals. Scientific exchange accelerated the development of technologies that benefited everyone. Younger civilizations were being welcomed into the community rather than suppressed. It was not perfect. Nothing built by imperfect beings ever could be. There were still conflicts, still injustices, still challenges that seemed insurmountable. But there was also hope. For the first time in the galaxy's long history, there was a genuine chance that intelligent life could coexist in peace, that the ancient cycles of rise and fall, conquest and extinction could finally be broken. Humanity had unveiled its hidden end. Silence had descended across the galaxy. But that silence had given way to something new. A conversation between species, a dialogue about the future, a collaboration that spanned the stars. Sarah did not know what the future would bring. No one could, but she knew that humanity would face it alongside allies, rather than alone, that the secrets her ancestors had kept for 300 years had served their purpose and could finally be set aside. The silence was over. The conversation had begun, and somewhere in the hearts of every being who had fought and sacrificed and hoped for something better, a new story was being written. Story about a galaxy that had learned to work together, a story about the power of patience and the wisdom of restraint, a story about humanity, and it was only just beginning.